So today, we're taking a look at something a little bit different to the usual, and it's a bit of a history lesson to boot. Because today, we're going to be taking a look at 1965's Monsters Crash the Pajama Party. A short comedy horror film that's a prime example of the kind of fodder that used to go down in the age-old pastime of the spook show. Between the early 1930s and late 1960s, generally around either Halloween or Friday the 13th, theatres across America would partake in what was generally known as spook shows. The best way to kind of describe them today would be that they were a mixed media event that would play out in theatres, both the theatrical and cinematic. Essentially, on entering a spook show, you'd never quite know what you were going to get. In part because they varied so much from place to place, and in part because the theatre was completely in on the happening, and a chunk of the audience was made up of planted stooges who, at any given moment, would suddenly become part of the show, leading to hilarity and frights. The bulk of your average spook show would consist of between 2 and 4 live performances. This ranged from the supernatural, your eerie psychics and fortune tellers, your folks claiming to be telekinetic who, largely through pre-set up wires, would move things around the theatre. Then you'd have your mad doctors. These would generally take 2 forms, either comedic or sinister, the former basically playing to the crowd and acting the comedian, the latter generally setting an unsettling tone and usually using stooges from the audience as their human test subjects. But you'd also have more novel items, like the opportunity to meet Frankenstein or the Wolfman live on stage. There'd be endurance tests, one of the more infamous ones being a woman who claimed that she could stay buried alive with only an air tube for a full 24 hours, who was placed outside the theatre as a form of advertising and was seen to rise from the grave as a grand showstopper at the end of the night. Some of these shows even had prizes for surviving the night, ranging from a certificate if you stayed in your seat for the entire duration, right the way through to actual cash prizes. And no half-decent night of frights would be complete without a movie or two. And to that end, Monsters Crash the Pajama Party. Basically, films were a godsend to these shows from a performance perspective. It bought them time, however long was needed to change costumes, set dress, or even have a break if the act before the movie was particularly labour-intensive. Sometimes there'd be a short movie and then a longer film, other times just a short. But one thing was always guaranteed. If you had a movie playing in your spook show, things were about to get nuts. There isn't honestly much to say when it comes to the plot of Monsters. It's just over 30 minutes long and opens with a mad doctor hamming it up good and proper about how eerie and unpleasant things are about to get. We then get some literal monkey business from our ape friend who will be appearing through most of the short, before we're introduced to a spooky and abandoned house on Haunted House Lane, where we're introduced to 2 police officers who explain that basically the house was previously owned by a mad doctor whose favourite pastime was abducting teenagers and turning them into animals. They also explain that they're checking the place out for a group of girls who are planning to stay there for the night. And it's here that the plot basically begins and ends, as we're introduced to the girls who are all part of a sorority, and as part of their initiation pledge, they have to spend a night in the place and not get so scared that they run out of the place screaming like little girls. Their boyfriends help them get into the place and get settled. They all get into their naughty nightwear. And naturally, one of the group heads off into the house alone, where she's kidnapped by the ape and taken to the mad doctor's secret underground human-to-animal experiment lab. This then prompts the other girls to go looking for her, and they all slowly get captured by both the mad doctor's ape and a hunchback. And while this is going on, the boyfriends end up coming back with a plan to put the willies up the girls as a bit of a Halloween prank. Careful. Before you know it, the whole thing's gone full Scooby-Doo, and it's teens versus apes, hunchbacks, and a mad doctor, and everyone, including the audience, is on the line. And, well, that's the movie. What makes it unique, however, is the return of our old friend Gimmick Cinema, because in the closing moments of the film, the Mad Doctor requires a new test subject, and so he sends the ape and the hunchback out into the audience to grab an unwilling participant. What would then happen is the ape and the hunchback would run off screen and burst into the theatre, causing all kinds of commotion before grabbing a woman who was a plant in the audience and dragging her off screaming out of the cinema. They'd then all reappear in the film and the illusion would be complete. This kind of stuff for 1965 was beyond commonplace. William Castle had more or less monopolised gimmick cinema in the late 50s and early 60s. In fact, films like House on Haunted Hill and The Tingler were regular showings on the spook show circuit, as they were able to fudge similar gimmicks into the show to decent effect. But there's something surprisingly thrilling about literal event cinema, when you're not quite sure exactly what's going to happen on the night, or whether the person sitting next to you is about to be abducted by the Wolfman on a moment's notice. With the film being so short and the plot so basic, there isn't really a whole lot to say on the script front. It's a border Looney Tunes type daffy comedy horror film. It's a breezy 30 minutes, it's cheesier than a Wheel of Gouda, and it knows exactly what it's trying to be. It's maybe a little slower than I'd like, but it still manages to keep a keen enough pace. The dialogue for the teens is cruddy, but for the baddies is delightfully hammy and melodramatic, and the cast relish in the opportunity to munch some scenery. I think it utilises the gimmick reasonably well, but having it only happen at the end was a bit of a bummer. I'd have preferred to maybe have a couple of moments of carnage and audience invasion across the runtime. But given the thing only really existed to buy the performers doing the acts around the film time to prepare, I think it's a fine little film. Maybe a little too basic for its own good, but I'm not going to complain. The script was written and directed by David L. Hewitt, with a co-writing credit belonging to Gene Hewitt. David has 10 directing credits and 9 writing credits. He directed everything he wrote, and his last credit was for a project in 1978. His best-known projects in this field are probably either The Time Travelers or The Mighty Gorga, but really, his speciality was in visual effects. In that regard, he had 31 credits, with his last being in 2003 for Inspector Gadget 2. What a way to go. As for Jean, she had 2 writing credits for this and Gorga, but she was really more into script editing and continuity. In that field, she had 7 credits, with her last outing being The Doll Squad in 1973. On the direction front, again, not much to say. It's a painfully low-budget feature from the mid-60s. It's poor-looking even by Poverty Row standards, but I think they've been able to bring the elements together about as best they could to deliver an end product that gets the job done. It's not winning any awards anytime soon, but given that this was essentially Showtime filler, it looks way better than it could have ended up. With a decent hand on the rudder uniting the lighting team, set design and camera work, the piece looks moody, low-lit, and has the atmosphere of a good, cheesy haunted house movie. How much of that low lighting and moodiness is down to them not having a budget to go big? I think we all know the answer to that one. But it's great to see them doing something not hideously awful. The Cine 2 is just about on the level. Shots are entirely done for function, but they work with the low lighting effectively to really make the haunted house feel like an abandoned, musty, dusty relic. Hilariously, they really failed to fudge an external night lighting setup, with some corridors being lit entirely in blue. But rather interestingly, the botch job actually makes the film feel a bit moodier and artier than it was probably intending. So I'll give them accidental credit for that one. The Mad Doctor's lair is probably the worst of the film's Cine, and it's all in one place, with the cave system walls clearly being paper mache and the top of the set clearly being visible in some shots. While I feel they knew how to shoot melodramatic suspense horror and even the odd Scooby-Doo-esque runaround, they clearly had no idea how to capture a free-for-all, and the final battle basically ends in a carnage of cuts and compositional cavalcades. It's a mess, but it's a fun mess. Performance-wise, well, as mentioned, it's split into 2 camps. The normal teens in this thing are dull, but mercifully, they're only really on screen and talking for about 5 minutes, and spend most of the movie either being chased by the ape or taking part in the big end battle. The baddies in this are astounding. Total cheese, MST3K level cheese, hilarious over-the-top dramatica at its finest. They're lively, animate, vibrant, and unlike anything you'll see in a 60s feature outside of the Lemon Grove Kids. I loved the Mad Doctor and Ape in this movie, and I think they were worth the price of admission alone. And finally, the soundtrack. And it's early 60s synth tunes that absolutely wouldn't suit this kind of genre typically. But in a weird way of contrast, it kind of feels right, for lack of a better word. It's bleepy, bloopy, overly warm, plinky plonky music, and it takes all the horror out of this thing and replaces it with, well, not a whole lot else, quite honestly. I liked it, but I totally understand if people found it very annoying. The intriguing thing about Monsters Crash the Pajama Party isn't so much the movie itself, but what happened to it after its run on the spook show circuit. Once that movement had come to an end, the film basically just got tossed into a film can and buried in a back room to be forgotten. That is, until the 90s, when the team at Something Weird Video recovered the film amongst other reels and preserved it. It got its first home video debut in 2001 on VHS and DVD under Something Weird's own label. And if you bought the VHS version, I kinda feel sorry for you, because the DVD release for this was basically what gave the thing a whole new lease of life. Because the Monsters Crash the Pajama Party Spook Show Spectacular DVD, while not comprehensive, is insane. So the whole DVD is basically one giant Easter egg hunt. There's over 3.5 hours worth of material on this disc, including Monsters in full, 1960s Tormented in full, clips from several B-movies that played at spook shows at the time, home movies dating back to the late 1920s where horror fans from the time were trying to recreate scenes from Nosferatu and London After Midnight in their backyard. There's a tour of a 60s haunted house, hours of film advertisements, radio spots, posters and trailers for up-and-coming spook shows from the 1930s right up to the late 50s, a spooky short movie presented in 3D, for the most part, and even a couple of compilations set to surf rock. And that's not even mentioning the trippy as balls hypno wheel opening that actually does screw with your eyes and make you see weird things if you stare at it for too long. Any release that opens with a hypno wheel automatically gets a +1 in my book. All of this is scattered across half a dozen DVD menus, all unlabelled and all entirely reliant on you randomly jabbing your DVD cursor around and seeing what shakes out. It's insane, and I absolutely loved it. It's the perfect way to get people to engage with this kind of media, and I'm not the first to say it goes down well at parties, but I have had this thing running on a TV at get-togethers in the past, and people always stop for a few minutes to play around with the thing to see what happens. And all of this comes packaged with a booklet in conversation style discussing spook shows, how they played out, their popularity, and hints on how to get your own spook show off the ground. There's 2 pairs of 3D glasses, and apparently it's a bit of a crapshoot as to whether you get the nice ones or not. James Rolfe covered this release on Cinematica about 14 years ago, and his 3D glasses were crappy and didn't even have arms to stay on your face. Mine, on the other hand, were rigid, have arms, and feel great. And there's also a full breakdown of everything you can find on the disc, if you want to turn it into a treasure hunt of sorts. Obviously, with it being a Something Weird release, and it being from well over 20 years ago at this point since it got released, the quality is a bit up and down. Some clips have survived better than others, some clips handled compression better than others, but there's nothing too hideous on here. In that regard, I think it's actually kind of aged pretty well. But even then, that's not the end of the story. Because in 2019, Something Weird teamed up with Modern Harmonic Records and released Monsters Crash the Pajama Party on vinyl. Deep breaths, Dan. Deep breaths. So, basically, this strange release takes some of the radio stings that can be found on the DVD and presents them uncompressed and in mono. Intercut with the advertisements are a mixture of sound effects and some of the best damn 60s spooky surf rock that could be found. All pressed on monster blood green vinyl. Why am I mentioning this? Because they repressed the 2001 DVD with new disc art and included it inside the record sleeve. Unfortunately though, the version included in this set isn't a one-to-one reissuing. They've removed the Easter egg hunt gimmick, and instead it's just a straight list of everything that was on the old pressing, but accessible via a single labelled menu. But I'm totally grateful that this movie's been able to get a fresh press, as after 20 years, the concern about disc rot on this one is strong. Also included is a completely new fanzine all about spook shows and their impact that I feel has a broader appeal than the booklet that was initially included in the DVD release. Combined, both of these sets are probably the closest to a comprehensive representation of spook show theatre that's readily available, and I think they've chosen to present it in the best way possible. At the time of recording, both the DVD and vinyl are out of print. The price goes up or down depending on the time of year, so if you do want a physical copy of this, keep an eye on listings. But it should also be mentioned that if you want to dip your toe into all this for a reasonable price, Amazon and Bandcamp both have digital copies of the vinyl available for download and preview, and I highly recommend you check it out. It's honestly out of sight. Is Monsters Crash the Pajama Party worth checking out entirely off its own merits? Honestly, I'd say no, regrettably. I really like it. I think it's quirky, kooky, but brief fun. But it's how something weird presented it with the Spook Show Spectacular release that finally gave it the added context and goofiness to really tip it over the edge and make it worth checking out. An absolute must for your next Halloween party, whether it's on your record player or your TV. If you've got guests around this Halloween, I can guarantee they'll have an absolute ball playing around with this thing. And if you can get a copy for a reasonable price, I absolutely cannot recommend it enough. It's been a staple watch of my Halloweens for the last 15 years, and I'm sure it'll be one for you too.